Well, Coach, want to welcome you out to the podcast and also give you congratulations on an awesome start to the season.
Thank you.
It's like, tell me about that world. And it's been your world. It's kind of been your life.
Yep.
From college, but like, tell me about that world of like, you start the season, you do everything, you prepare, you do everything that you can, but then you go play the game. And you've seen the highs and you've seen the lows, and that's kind of the life that you sign up for. But tell me like what that's like.
Yeah, it's the beauty of sport, right? Because you get to experience success and failure and unpredictability in front of the whole world, and it's so immediate. The returns are exactly immediate, right? There's nowhere to hide, and it's the drama of it that makes it so beautiful. I was talking to the guys, we just played a game against North Carolina State to win the championship of our MTE event. And the first 9 minutes, we were really shaky. And I was trying to help our guys understand that, fans are watching the game and feeling frustrated and upset and walking away from their TVs and feeling like there's no hope. And our guys just kept hammering away. And then you see the tables turn and you see this epic game unfold before your eyes as a fan. And it's the real-time drama and watching these guys do something that is inspiring. And that's the beauty of sport, is that it's not scripted. It's completely unpredictable.
Is there anything better?
Oh, it's beautiful. Like, you get to live it out in real time.
I don't know if there's anything better. Like, when I think of like the real drama in my life, the highlights, the peaks, it's got to be sport. You know what I mean? Like the highs of the highs of the high, and also the lows of the lows, like the depth of depression. Yeah. And I was watching that game against North Carolina State, and it was just that. It was, and when I think what's fun is you're coming into a world that's just so different. Like, college sports in general are just completely being disrupted right now.
Yep.
And navigating that, and also coming into the Big 12, that's like arguably the best conference in the country. Like, what conference is better than the Big 12?
It's not even close. It's not even a close second, actually, right now. It's the dynamic nature of college basketball right now, and being at BYU, which is such a special place. I really do feel like I have the best job in the world. Because it's one of the hardest jobs I could possibly imagine right now, and that just drives me. I mean, that's what we all look for is challenge, and everything is changing so fast in the way we function as coaches and athletic departments.
Give me some
teams.
Examples. Give me like some real-time examples
Yeah,
of like,
so
it was like this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Today it's like this.
Right. So, the two most dramatic changes that have been just like, I'm talking about seismic shifts, like turning the world upside down in terms of college athletics, is the transfer portal, where now every single player gets a free transfer. It's unrestricted free agency every single year. And then the second dynamic that's so interesting is this NIL component that is brand new. It's for forever it was this notion of amateurism. This kind of noble amateurism, which for me right now, when you think about it, we were all kind of sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
And to now where it's these players can be compensated, but there's no salary cap, there's no structure, and so it's like the wild west.
Complete Wild West.
We talk to our friends, in the NBA, and they're like, "Man, we don't know how you guys survive with unrestricted free agency every single year and no salary cap or salary structure." It is the wild west, which is actually super exciting, because if you can be creative and if you can find answers that fit for your university, it gives you an incredible chance to jump ahead of the curve.
Yeah. What are those answers? Because you're doing it. Like, you hit me up. Yeah. I donated for NIL, and I think a plug on this is like, the reason why one of the reasons I wanted to have you come on is like, this is something that people can absolutely impact the outcome. If you support the team, give some money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who who have a lot of money. And I think basketball, out of any of them, you have the ability to change the calculus more just because there's less players. You know what I mean?
There's a twofold kind of approach to NIL. One is this idea that this is a really good thing. So for the last decade, several decades, the money in college athletics has been going through the roof. You're seeing conferences sign multi-billion-dollar television contracts. It's just really incredible. And the schools are divvying up the money, and administrators and coaches and corporate sponsors and other sports are kind of getting the lion's share of that money, and the athletes that are actually the product. When you get down to it, it's about these athletes. The athletes are actually getting a significantly less than acceptable minimum wage portion of this money. And so there's nothing noble about amateurism when you think about it. And I grew up totally loving
embracing
that.
it.
Yeah,
embracing
thinking it's something noble and special. It's actually not. The real truth is amateurism is not special, because amateurism is just the people that are earning the money not actually having a chance to partake of the money, and the other people getting wealthy off of their backs, right? So, and so that notion is hopefully we'll dispel that pretty quickly. The beautiful side of NIL right now for our athletes is it's giving these young athletes a chance to kind of like, instead of coming out of college in significant debt, kind of act really, really responsibly, which we're doing with beautiful ways. For example, I'll give you an example. Every single one of our athletes now has a direct deposit Roth IRA account that they're trying to max out every year. And if you do that, the numbers show that if you do that over the course of your college career, your 4-year college career, is 65, that's going to be $6,500 max contribution every year. And that turns into like almost $2.5 million just based on the standard S&P performance over the last 100 years. It's 65, tax-free, and that's life-changing savings that they can actually make a huge dent in just in college by acting responsibly. And so it's a beautiful opportunity for athletes. The nice thing for fans is that we've had donors that be so generous for so long in terms of building buildings and funding scholarships and doing all this kind of, helping with technology, training technology. Now, our fans actually get to have a direct impact on the personnel on the court and help mentoring and building these young athletes into more than what they've ever been before, and also a direct impact on winning games. So when you look at all those slices of it, this NIL situation is pretty great. Hopefully we'll get some structure. So hopefully there'll be some sanity.
How does somebody help? So if I'm sitting here and I'm saying I had an exit from a company, I've got some liquidity, I'm a big BYU fan. How does that person say, I'm going to contact Coach Pope? I want to direct my dollars to basketball. I want to help basketball like excel in the big, like, what's the process?
Yeah, so there's a ton of different avenues and a ton of different potential deals. The NCAA has given 4 main parameters that we have to work on. Every agreement with the student athlete has to be a quid pro quo, meaning there's got to be a give and take on both sides. It's got to be written in a contract. There are certain parameters. If you're a corporate sponsor with BYU, whether you can use the logo, use the athlete in uniform or not. But the simplest way is for people that want to be involved, if they want to contact me directly or go through the Royal Blue directly. So the Royal Blue is a freestanding entity that's separate from the university, which is required. But I'm actually allowed to go fundraise for the Royal Blue. That's been
super cool.
That's been
so like the one that I did, is that through Royal Blue?
That's through Royal Blue.
I'm putting my money in Royal Blue.
Yep.
And then that finds its way to the basketball program.
Yeah, and so through the Royal Blue, they'll work agreements out with student athletes where they can come represent your company. They can come make appearances with your family or your corporation or whatever. They can distribute capital, like through their corporate sponsorship agreement. The Royal Blue has a corporate sponsorship agreement with BYU where they can distribute tickets. And so there's every possible avenue to make an agreement through the Royal Blue.
And all this stuff like wasn't, point of the podcast, like the today and what's going on today that's not like the stuff that I'm the most interested in, but I think it's relevant. And I think anybody that, I think 2023 is so interesting because me as a fan, I can actually like impact. Like, and I very rarely has that ever been the case where there's like that direct connection between like, if I wanted to, I could actually like help. I could be a part of this, and I think that's so cool, both for the players and for the program.
Super interesting. Do you think about our team right now? So our team right now at this early point in the season ranked number 19 in the country.
So cool.
You know, we're undefeated right now. We're bringing national attention to BYU. These players are playing great, and we're probably at the bottom of the NIL food chain this year.
As far as capital.
What's interesting is some people think about, you know, we've had this, people talk about the G-Wagon phenomenon. Like, I don't want to put a bunch of money into the Royal Blue so that now guys are rolling to the games in a G-Wagon. And that's actually not the way we're functioning at BYU at all. You know, our guys are approaching this potential income in an incredibly responsible, life-building, life-altering way. I could go into great detail, player by player, about the extraordinary things they're doing. The trick for us is how do we retain these players? Because now it's an open market. There's free agency every single year. You know, we have really good players. They're in the national spotlight right now. When the portal opens after the season this year, certainly guys have to go have a conversation about their market value. And so it's not really NIL for us at BYU is not about going out and winning bidding wars. It's more about we have really good players who love BYU, and can we make it a reasonable financial choice for them to stay at BYU, where they're not foregoing $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 somewhere else to stay at BYU? I think that's a heavy ask of any young person.
I think my mentality is different. I'm just like, it's embarrassing, honestly, for me. Like, and this is just like, got some distance as a fan. I'm not in it. I'm not emotionally connected. But I'm like, it's embarrassing. Like, there's people who love BYU who have a tremendous amount of money and aren't helping. I'm like, that to me is embarrassing. I'm like, if you really care, like, let's go compete. Like, let's go get the resources. And regardless of how they're utilized, like, we can put a plan together. And there's like 100 different, like, and there is no right answer right now. But you got to have the pie. And if you go triple or quadruple the pie, you got a lot more options. And so I think that's the one for me, like, from an outsider looking in, I'm like, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, we're better than we're doing, and we should be better. I think a lot of it's ignorance. Even just for me as somebody that the only reason I gave money was because you asked me. That was it. And I'm like, that shouldn't be like, there should be some education, and there should be, you know, and so hopefully, you know, with disruption, there's an opportunity to get in front of it. And I think the big thing is just getting the word out and saying, hey, we need your help. And come help. We want your help. We want you to be involved. So anyway, anyway.
When we think about fan bases, as we evaluate the college landscape, there's two things that you have to have as a fan base to be really successful in the NIL space. One is you have to have capacity. We have ridiculous capacity as a BYU fan base, like nationwide. It's insane.
It's insane.
The capacity we have. And the second thing you have to have is devotion. And we got insane devotion. Every arena we go to in the Big 12 this year, every place we go, there's going to be two sections that are sold out with BYU fans, not that travel, that actually live there. In that sense, we're different than every other university in terms of our devotion. The biggest challenge for us right now is we also are a rule-following fan base. And so for us, the truth is that, and I don't know if, you know, the truth is that players have been being illegally compensated at a lot of universities for a long time, right? And so, but this is a seismic shift for a BYU fan base for us to wrap our head around it. So, you know, we're making huge progress right now. We have great momentum because people like you have jumped in a huge way. And I expect that we're going to win this space, and we're going to actually win it in a better way.
Well, you can win it in a better way, but it's embarrassing. Like, this is just me venting. But like, when I look at it, I'm like,
preach, brother.
Guys have a ton of money. Guys and gals. They love BYU. Like, help. You don't need to go give $500,000, but go give $10,000, go give $5,000, go give $1,000, go help. If you're going to buy season tickets, like, match that and help and go actually give the team the resources to, and again, like these players, like I love how conscientious and thoughtful with the Roth IRAs and all of the different programmatic stuff that it's, you're helping somebody go develop long term.
Yeah.
I actually like the mentorship stuff. I think the mentorship stuff is a cop out.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I'm going to go mentor 10 people. It's like, well, how about you donate some money and then mentor them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, anyway, they're like,
it's super exciting. And like I said, there is a way that this works at BYU. I'll give you a great example. So I was just with Gideon George last night. So he partnered with a super generous NIL partner here at BYU. And so what they did was they started a tuk-tuk company. It's a cab company in Nigeria. In Nigeria.
Yep.
And so it's an unbelievable, sustainable business plan where it was startup money. It was almost like his own private Series A, right?
Yep. Where
this donor came in, this NIL partner came in and said, all right, let's start it. We're going to start it. You're going to grow it, and here we go. And they've doubled the size of the company in a year and a half now. And he has an impact. He has like a social impact and a financial impact and a growing business. Like one of the most charitable things, I think you have to agree, one of the most charitable things that we can do is start a business.
100%.
It employs people, it gives people purpose. And it's also changed Gideon's life and changed his family's life. And so you think about that is straight up dollars, but it's straight up dollars that are not being spent on a G-Wagon. They're spent on life-changing, business growing entrepreneurship. I could give you, we could go down the list of our players and what they're doing.
Keep going.
And those stories win, man. When I get to go into a home and talk to a family about not just receiving a check, but becoming an owner, like that's a powerful word in most of the places that I go into.
Oh, it's incredible. So let's shift gears from today. I want to go back to the beginning. I want to hear the Mark Pope story. So where'd it all begin? Like, where's home?
Yeah,
parents, family life.
32nd, was born in Omaha, Nebraska. Moved to New York when I was 6 months old, and went to elementary school and started junior high school in New York. Some of the greatest experiences of my life. Loved living there. And then my dad was with Union Pacific Railroad and took a job with Burlington Northern. Burlington was changed to Burlington Resources in Seattle. So we moved out of the Northwest and went to high school there.
You were how old on that move?
It was junior high school when we moved to the West Coast.
Hard move?
It was a great move.
Okay.
It was like a life-altering, life-shifting move. Part of it was kind of the age that we were in.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we really embraced all the opportunities that were open to us in terms of athletics and academics and social.
Because you had how many siblings?
I had 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters.
Okay, so you were right in the middle.
Yep. And it was a life-changing move there, and it was when we really immersed ourselves as siblings in kind of everything that the world had to offer, and so
you guys thrived in Seattle.
Yeah, really thrived.
Okay,
it was really beautiful, and life was just a little bit easier. New York, life is hard, man. It's, you're just fighting to kind of get from point A to point B so much. Yeah, and I love that city. It's my favorite place in the world, but. Moving away to Seattle, and Seattle was just at the time, it wasn't the Seattle we know now. It was just a kind of a city on the rise.
Emerging.
And
it was younger.
It was pre-tech, right? Seattle, and so it was a beautiful experience there. And then ended up going to the University of Washington for 2 years.
And you excelled in high school, right?
Yeah.
Just basketball or other sports?
I was my lifelong dream was I was track and cross country guy. Sebastian Coe. I don't know if anybody would know that name, but Olympic champion 800-meter runner, was my hero growing up. Great Britain had this great middle distance running tree, and I loved competing in track and field.
I didn't realize that track and field was part of it.
It was actually a great way to grow up. It was the bedrock, kind of the foundation of my athletic world. One of the great things about running is there is nowhere to hide. It is just sheer guts and
grit.
Training and grit, right? It's just pure. It's not heavy on a skill element. Of course, there are, like, as you get in elite levels, there's it becomes more complicated. But in its purity is it is just hard training and guts.
But who got you into that? Is that
It's
mom and dad?
Yeah,
Is that
mom and
like,
dad. So we got there and we moved to Seattle. My dad was like, I got to get the kids involved in something. So it was a fun run, and we had kind of done some amateur running in New York. And so we, competed in 1 or 2 races, I think, my whole life, just really amateur. And so we moved to Seattle, and there was the Nordstrom Kids Run, headquarters of Nordstrom stores in Bellevue. And so Dad just signed us up, and he started us training and jumped in the run and did really well. And there was a really competitive track and field team. That kind of saw me there and that recruited me, and we went the first time and started training as Cascade Striders, and I haven't said that name in a long time.
you're how old?
I was, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10, something
It's
like
crazy.
that.
So your first like athletic, like competitive experience was track.
Yes, 100%.
I had no idea.
And it was a great background for training because you just learned to work. You just learned the work, and there was nowhere to hide from it. In fact, I'll tell you a really embarrassing story. It was a really growing experience for me. So I didn't love it. I didn't love the work, and but I was naturally pretty good at it. And so my dad had set up a training regimen for me, and I guess this is when I was 9, and so I would come home from school, and he had set out, kind of a workout schedule, and I was doing it sometimes and not doing it sometimes and not being super honest about doing it or not doing it. And Dad actually, one day, he'd take me into the office one day a year, which is super fun, go to downtown Seattle, and he had a big workout fitness center in there. So he just went in and set me up on the treadmill.
Yeah.
And programmed it to kind of do the run that I should be able to do right at that point. And I was a couple months into training and hadn't been very diligent. And Dad just set me up and went to work, and then came back 20 minutes later, and I was dying. He's like, "Are you okay? You feeling sick?" And I was like, "Well, I actually haven't been doing the training." And it was just like, I felt all the things you might imagine. I felt shame, and I felt embarrassment. It was just a life-altering experience for me forever.
At 9.
It changed my life forever. And it just tied in this idea of work and success. It tied them together so tightly in my 9-year-old mind.
That's so profound.
It changed the
to me.
trajectory of my life. It was
I'm thinking about my 9-year-old.
Yeah.
My daughter had her 9th birthday yesterday. And I'm like, to think that like that crossroads impacted your whole life. I'm like, man, I got to be a better dad. I'm not even like aware of this. I'm like, oh, she's doing her thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, and that was exactly how my dad was rolling too. He's just like, "Hey, here's the workout. Go do it. Are you doing it? How's it going?" I'm like, "Oh, Dad is doing great."
That impactful.
But I think
for
it was
you.
a combination. Like, my dad is the most honest person I've ever met in my life. It's one of the greatest gifts that he ever gave me, and in a hard side too, where it's hard to be honest. He just is like the definition of honesty to me. And so I almost think that the connection was forged not so much because it was like I wanted to work or I wanted to be successful. It was so much because, like, I know that about my dad. Like, he would be painfully honest sometimes. It was one of his greatest gifts. And then here I was in this moment, I was being dishonest, and it was just like, it just washed over me. I was like, I never want to be in this space again. And as a byproduct, it turned into this kind of like work is, it just is. It's kind of the foundation of everything that we do, and I love it. And it just is a beautiful home for me right
so
now.
learn to work, learn to compete. When did basketball come into the picture?
So I was playing playing all sports. I was playing football and basketball and running track and cross country, but track and cross country was my home.
That was your thing.
And even my freshman year in high school, it was where I was. And my high school coach came to me after my cross country season was in the fall, and then I had my sophomore basketball season. That when I was starting to get recruited, and it was starting to garner some attention. And my coach, who I will love forever, he got me and my dad together after the season. He's like, "Hey, it's time to shut the other stuff down. Like, you could have a future in this game."
Wow.
And we probably need to do it. So it was after my sophomore season.
So he knew.
And then we went straight. Yep.
But did you know, could you kind of feel it at that point? Like, hey, I could be really good at this.
I didn't know what any of it meant because I didn't
Yeah.
really grow up in an athletic family.
Yeah.
It wasn't like our DNA. The families that we see now.
I mean, I think about Leanne. I'm
Yeah.
like, she grew up.
She
Her
grew up
dad
in-
was a coach.
Yes.
You know, like that was their DNA. Where for
Yeah.
you,
That was so foreign
It
to
wasn't.
me.
It
was foreign
wasn't.
to our family.
Yeah.
Like the idea of recruiting was so foreign to us. Like we didn't know what it was supposed to look like or what it meant or if it was real. But I was blessed. Rich Belcher was my high school coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach in the state of Washington, and he's also a dear friend. I make it back to Seattle once a year at least. Find recruiting or something to do there, or go see. I have some family still in Seattle, and we'll go to Little John's and have breakfast. It's one of my favorite things to do.
I mean,
with
he's got to be like so proud of you.
Yeah, and he's
Because you kind of like
Yeah.
his kid a little bit.
He changed my
Like,
life.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like that relationship, especially that age
yeah.
of coach, and it's just special.
You know
What I mean?
My dad was my first coach, and I didn't really recognize it because he's my dad, right?
Yeah.
But Coach Belcher was, and I had great coaches. Wallace Johnson was a AAU coach for me that was great. But Coach Belcher, without me knowing it subconsciously, he was the first coach that I had where I just started to understand the influence that coaches would have on my life because he changed my life in a lot of ways.
Interesting. So you catch root, give up some of these other things. When was it like, oh man, I'm on the scene, or like the recruiting started? Because I mean, you went and played at.
Yeah, so my first 2 years, so I was recruited by everybody in the country.
Yep.
I was
And could
really
have gone
fortunate
anywhere,
that
right?
way.
Could
Yeah.
have gone anywhere,
had a
like
chance to
North
go
Carolina,
everywhere. Yep.
Duke, Kentucky.
Yep. North Carolina was my dream. At the end of the day, like that never became a reality. Duke was casually recruiting, but never offered. Kentucky was all in, kind of from the beginning.
They
with
were
Coach
all in.
Pitino.
Yeah.
Syracuse, Jim Boeheim was all in. Arizona was a great program at the time.
Real good.
Still continues to be a great program. And so it was kind of all over the map. Ended up deciding to go to Washington because I fell in love with Lynn Nance, who was a former FBI narcotics officer, turned basketball coach, and was everything that you would expect. Was just a tough, hard-nosed Midwest, no nonsense coach, and kind of had this idea that with some other players in the state of Washington, we all kind of jumped on that band. We thought, man, we're going to go in there and bring back University of Washington basketball. And so we had a pretty good class that all committed together. I was there for 2 years. After my sophomore year, coach got fired. We failed miserably. I had some personal accolades, but we couldn't win at the level we needed to. It was probably the hardest 2 years of my basketball life.
Just getting drummed.
A ton of tears.
Yeah.
A ton of frustration. So disappointing. And
But
then
you played
ultimately-
great, right? Like
Yeah,
personal performance, you played good.
Personally played well, but just wasn't good enough to win.
Yeah.
And when coach got fired, it was terrible. It was actually another one of those seismic moments in my life where I'm like, I couldn't do it. I loved him. I love him. We still are in contact all the time. And
That was it.
yeah,
That's what
and I
said,
just
I'm done.
couldn't do it. And he got fired, and I couldn't stay. It just felt wrong to stay without him. It was just devastating time, man. It was really hard. And so then transferred to Kentucky, and it was an unbelievable blessing for me, in the sense that I got to see, Kentucky was on the uptick. Coach had just been to a Final Four. They ended up losing to Michigan.
Yep.
And Kentucky is the center of the basketball world. I mean, there's nowhere like it. It is. I've never seen anything like it. So I was at Washington, where we really struggled, couldn't win, didn't have a fan base, didn't have any of that experience.
That magic.
Couldn't play in the tournament, didn't win games,
Yeah.
no national attention. And I got to see the toughest side of college basketball. And then I rolled into the Taj Mahal of college basketball at the University of Kentucky. And I actually appreciate it more than anybody else was there, because nobody else
for
knew.
sure,
They
for
didn't
sure.
know how the rest of the world was living at the time.
Isn't that crazy how that works? Like I think about this all the time. I probably think about this more than I should, about kind of this concept of life is happening for you and not to you, and that there's this bigger plan.
Yep.
And you think about like your journey, and you think about that Washington piece in your journey. It's like, well, you could have gone Kentucky as a freshman, but going after you experienced Washington probably changed your career, like fundamentally, because the appreciation of what you had is probably different.
Yeah, it didn't only change my career, it just changed my life. And what I mean by that is, had I gone straight to Kentucky, I don't have any context for what I'm experiencing at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think, I mean, in the Book of Mormon, we read out opposition in all things, right? And there's a purpose, because if we don't have context to our life, we lose the richness of it. We lose the beauty of it. Like we just do. And it's one of the things that I think about, I think about this. I have this big, huge kick I'm on right now about we get distracted. We're trying to chase achievement instead of chasing becoming. And there's a huge difference.
Big difference.
And if we live our whole life in achievement, like we lose all the context of life and we really stifle our opportunity to become. And as parents, we do that sometimes, and it's so painful. There is nothing more painful than being a parent of an athlete, in the sense of like you just sit there in the stands and you're just like, you just want, parents in every aspect, like we just want to protect our children. And we're doing such a disservice to our children
to not let them fail.
By not letting them fail, man. By not letting them feel the hardship. By not letting them feel the moments of despair. And because if we're going to become something, it's going to be built on the despair. It's going to be built on the self-recognition and the shame that comes from understanding dishonesty, or avoiding work, or being in the dregs of the basketball world so you can understand how great it is to be in the best. Like, if we spend too much time saving our kids rather than instead of, by kind of backdooring achievement for them, instead of letting them become, giving them the space to like fail and become, it's just a disservice. And that experience at Washington on the bad side of basketball and Kentucky at the Taj Mahal was really meaningful to me.
Talk to me about Coach Pitino. What type of like man was he? What type of coach? What did you learn from Coach?
I love him. Like he you think about the coaches that impacted my life. We talked about, my dad and Wallace Johnson and Rich Belcher, and certainly Len Nance. But then I think about Coach Pitino, and he impacted my life in an incredible way, and a really tough way. It can't exist anymore in the world. But he was,
because he was hardcore, right?
Oh my gosh. Like, it was survival. Like, it was basketball boot camp every day, 365 days a year, oppressive pressure. And it was relentless pressure. And it was like picking you to pieces every single second of every single day, and crushing your spirit, crushing everything about you. And it was just, you come out of practice every day and be like, I hate him so much. Yeah. It was so tough. And
but you loved him.
Yeah, well, after the fact you do, because he changed you.
Because of who you became.
I say this all the time, and I don't really, I know this is scientifically not correct, but it's an illustration. He literally changed the DNA of how I was made as a human being. And he made it so I could walk into any room in any situation.
Because his standards were that high.
Yeah. And you can walk into any room in any situation, even if you're a fish out of water, and I can figure this out, and I can survive this. And any trial or any difficulty, you're like, hey, I can stand up tall because I know I can find a way to survive this. Because he forced you to do that in such an oppressive, tough environment.
I hear this so many times, and I hear it from a lot of people. And I think generationally, like, there was a window where that stuff could fly. Yeah. And it can't in 2023. It's just a different world. It's like these old school coaches, the Bobby Knights and the it just wouldn't
Yeah.
with social media and with the transfer, like with the world that you live in. It's more like a professional coaching job than a
For sure.
you know, this kind of amateur kind of. But I look at like the benefits. My daughter, and this is a completely different scenario, but my daughter, she does competitive cheer at a local program, and they're like nationally like recognized. Like they won the national championship last year. But I look at my 13-year-old daughter, and it's kind of old school. Like, and the parents get pissed, and there's part of me that's like, it is pretty hardcore. She's 13. But then I also like see who she's becoming. And she's getting strong emotionally and breaks down to tears, but she shows back up. And I'm like, I kind of like this. I kind of like the lessons that this girl is being taught at a young age. You know what I mean? So it's, how do you strike that balance in 2023 as a coach, that this is your DNA, like that hardcore, I am going to exact the highest standards, but also like you got to navigate the world that you live in.
Well, I think it's a better time now. Actually, I think it's better. I think that the way we used to do this was a little bit low hanging fruit, in the sense of like it would, and like I said, I love Coach P. Like I owe like so much of who I am to Coach P. I love him, man. I love him. I just owe him so much. I think now we just have to be more nuanced in how we do it, and there's beautiful ways to do it. You know, we talk about our daughter. So and I think the way we can do it is we can just not save our children from failures, but just be there to like help lift them up from the failure. Almost be grateful for the moments when they fail, because then they get to learn. In our house before they're on their own, they get to learn how to pick themselves up and how to kind of manage it, and how to, face people the day after they've had a terrible loss and still do it with class and charisma and confidence, right? And kind of all those things. My daughter Avery is playing tennis at BYU right now. We're not tennis parents. We don't know anything about tennis. She kind of got into tennis late, but when she first started, I was like, this is insanity, because there's no line judges. So you have these two 11-year-old girls out there calling lines, and then having to stand up for themselves, or have the courage to call it out when it's really out, and then take a beating from people in the stands or whatever. And when the first year I saw it, I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in athletics, right? But after a year, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, because what I got to see was I got to see my daughter start to stand up for herself. And like, not just stand up for herself, but actually be able to keep her wits about herself when she was like, that's not fair. And like have the courage to be like, to stand up and say, that's not right. In tennis, are you sure? Or it's like, I'm going to get a line judge, or that's not the right call, and actually stand up in front of people in a competitive environment. Do that.
And you got to like own it.
Oh,
you got to stand on your own feet.
It's a beautiful thing. And so, but I don't know, like I'm far from an expert on parenting, but I do think that I've seen this over and over again. And that's kind of the way we do that in this generation. In our generation growing up, it was kind of this, because there was no, like my parents were not letting me transfer from Kentucky. Like, it's like, no, this is where you are, man. This is what you signed up for.
And I think about so many of those things. I think about like, my business partner, Dave, he had kind of this iconic coach in Vegas.
Yeah.
And they won, multiple state championships, and Bryce Harper played for him, and like just a really great program. But this guy was crazy. Yeah. I mean, like the stuff that like would go on in that program, like he'd go to jail now, and so it's like one of those things. But for Dave, it shaped him. Yeah. Like it built like this toughness and this discipline, and they had this resolve and this pride. And I think it was pride that they'd done hard things, that they were willing to do harder things than anybody else. And when they showed up to compete, they had this swagger, anyway.
And just this confidence that you can, not this confidence that you can win every time, but this confidence you're like, I've been knocked down before.
And that like I'm practice was so much harder than this game. Like this game has not, like this game's a cakewalk. Like I've killed myself in practice, I mean, that's the gold. Like that's the good stuff.
And so that's the idea, that's the idea of achievement. So for example, when we're so desperate to have achievement every time, that we find all the workarounds, and I'm thinking about parents with children, but you can think about it in any environment, all the workarounds towards achievement, and sometimes it steals our ability to become. That's where we experience the failure and grow from the failure.
Coaching, there's so many parallels in life, both being a player and being a coach. Yeah. And I even think about like myself and like my life and, the prosperity that we live in that I didn't live in growing up. Yep. And how do I not screw up my kids?
Yes.
Like the struggle that I had growing up was mandatory. Yep. Like they're like my parents weren't gonna like kick in and go pay for. They didn't have the money, so it was just never a conversation. So I figured it out, But like, and so and I think it's hard as a parent because like when you see your like someone you love more than anybody else hurting, you want to like stop the pain.
Yes. Oh, yes.
That's a hard dynamic. But
you want to make an excuse, or you want to, and you stop the pain by making an excuse, right? Or like facilitating
getting them out of the pain versus having them get themselves out of the pain. And the right move is to have them get themselves. That's where you build the muscle. That's where you build the capability.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. Fun growing, man.
Hey, so go to Kentucky.
Yep.
Where'd you go from there?
Had an unbelievable experience at Kentucky. So we won a national championship my senior year. It was.
How did that feel?
Like nothing else. It was incredible.
Is that like I get to take that with me forever?
Like the fun stuff is, we're in the Meadowlands, so we're in New York, right? Yeah. We're in New Jersey, just across the river, and it was the last time they had the game, the national championship, the Final Four in a non-dome. Because tickets were scalping for ridiculous amounts of money. You could only fit 18,000 people in the gym, if you can imagine that.
It was tiny,
and it was we're playing Syracuse in the national championship game.
Their hometown.
So
It's their hometown.
And it's Kentucky had been 20 years since they'd won one, and so Kentucky.
And who were
was
your
so
teammates
starving.
at this point? Like who were the?
I had 9 NBA players on my team. You think about that. 9 of our players played. In fact, on that team we had 9 players playing the NBA eventually, and 8 of us played at least 7 years, which is crazy.
Come on.
So it's Antoine Walker and Tony Delk and Walter McCarty and Derek Anderson and Ron Mercer. I mean, these are all, every single one of them was a McDonald's All-American, and it was an unbelievable team. It was, we were probably in the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the history of college basketball, and we had a devastating loss the year before to go to the Final Four to North Carolina. And so the whole group came back, and it was just guys on a mission. And so to win that, and then you have all the experience after. I'll never forget being in the locker room. Some things I'll never forget. We're in the locker room after, and C.M. Newton, who's a giant in the basketball world, was our AD, and he said this. He said, "You guys, this is sweet right now. This feels sweet. But the beautiful thing about an accomplishment like this, it'll get sweeter every day for the rest of your life." And that's certainly borne out to be true.
You've just been able to carry that with you.
And then we're doing media, till 3 o'clock in the morning. We finally get on the bus. We just, it's just a 15-minute drive to our hotel. We get to the hotel, and you couldn't get off the bus. Like we literally could get out of the bus. Like the 20 feet from the bus to the elevator, like it took an hour, and it wasn't talking to people. It was just a mob of humanity. You
was
move.
Just so excited.
I was sure I was going to pass out. And then we,
because were you and Leanne married at this time?
No, I hadn't met.
So you were single.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then we flew. We stayed in New York that morning, and then we flew back, and we landed in Lexington. It's like a 7-mile drive from the airport. There's thousands of people, and then the whole drive is like cars lining both sides of the highway, people with signs crying. Drove the bus right into Rupp Arena. Rupp Arena's packed. Dropped a banner. It was amazing. Go to the White House. Did the whole thing was really incredible. And so that was an unbelievable experience. And then it was just on. And then miraculously got drafted in the second round. 4 guys got drafted that year, and then a bunch of the guys got drafted the next year. But
How much do you think you going to Kentucky impacted you being able, like, to be able to play with those players,
Yeah.
play under that coach?
everything. It was everything for me. So, and I barely got drafted at the tail end of the second round, but being with those guys prepared me to go
play at that
to
level.
go play at that level. And and I was barely hanging on by my fingernails in the league. I got to stay around for a long time and played on great teams. But
You were there how long?
I played 8 years in the league, a couple years
Oh,
overseas.
that's real time in
Yeah.
the league. Like that, the average
Yeah.
player is what, two
Yeah,
to 3?
2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It was, but like I said, I was a terrible player. But I got to be with great programs. So I was drafted by the Pacers, went to training camp, ended up getting a job for a really good team overseas. Wasn't going to play with the Pacers anyway. So Donnie Walsh was like, go take it, man. Go play. We keep your rights. You come back next year. So I go play there, come back the next year. Larry Brown, who's the head coach of the Pacers, who drafted me, has been fired. And Larry Bird has been hired, who had no interest in me, no affiliation with me. So I'm coming and they still have my rights, but the guys who drafted me are
They're
not
gone.
still there.
And that's never a good outcome.
And it's Larry Legend, right?
Yeah.
Larry Bird is my coach.
You got the GOAT.
And so I go to training camp. Just the rookie free agent camp in July, the very end of July, and it's just a 3-day training camp, and just like played out of my mind, like better than I've ever played before, and went with them this summer. And I mean, every day I'm like, I can't believe Larry Bird almost talked to the guy next to me, but that means he was almost talking to me, and it was epic. So I was with them for 2 years, a great Pacers team. In fact, The Last Dance, if you've seen the documentary on Michael Jordan, that was my rookie year. We lost to them in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals.
You had them.
And just got to, my first experience in the league was with some of the greatest vets of all time, Reggie Miller and Mark Jackson and Rick Smith. So you walked in the league and they teach you how to be a pro. And I was so blessed. And then went through this series of getting fired and get a new job and getting fired and a new job kind of throughout my tenure in the league. And it was, I always say I was the biggest fan to ever actually put on a jersey in the NBA. And it was awesome.
When did you meet Leanne along the way?
So I knew her older brother, Damon Archibald, was a terrific basketball player, played at Boise State and then won a NAIA championship at Albertson College. And then we had both gone to rookie camp. The Indiana Pacers and the Golden State Warriors had a joint camp. And so I got to know him a little bit. And so after my first year with the Pacers, I was at Pete Newell's camp, a legend in basketball in Hawaii. And Damon was coaching the college camp, and I was a player in the pro camp, and we just crossed paths every day. He's like, you need to call my sister. Leanne was David Letterman's personal assistant in New York, and he was like, you need to call her. Next time you go up there, let her get tickets to the show, whatever, And so eventually we met, and then I chased her around for a year and a half and finally convinced her to marry me, and it was magic. I mean, talk about the greatest gift of my life. She just is out of this world, amazing.
And now you look back and kids raised them out of the house, but could you ever have thought,
No, I mean, listen, I think we get a chance to look back on our life and see God's hand in our life for sure.
I mean, it is just like me, we're in the same neighborhood, Chelsea's friends with your wife, and we just we admire your family. You guys have raised some great kids. You know what I mean? You show up with just this really incredible energy. I've experienced hard times and I've experienced the highs. Yeah. And you'll go through a tough patch coaching and you show up with the smile and you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, you guys just have this great, it feels like you got this great chemistry as a couple. Yeah. And you created a great culture with your kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's outside of the professional world and all those things.
Well, that's Lee. I mean, she just is. I mean, if there's two people that God put on the planet to be together in all our imperfectness and weirdness and whatever, she is. she's the greatest gift in my life, right? And she is also born to do to be walking the path that we're walking, like our little slice of path in this earth. And
because she was raised with it, right?
yeah,
She knows
more
what it's
about it than I
like
do.
being married to a coach.
In fact, our first
daughter.
conversation,
Yeah.
this is our first conversation ever on the phone. She's in New York, I'm in Indianapolis. I call her. She just had completed the New York Marathon. This is the introduction. Like literally, she had just completed a couple hours ago. I didn't know really anything about her other than she was living in New York. And so we're talking. We probably talked for 45 minutes, and I'm talking to her about. I'm an NBA basketball player. I won a national championship in college. Right?
You're feeling good.
I'm like I know hoops. And then so she starts talking to me about got on this random situation where this guy she knew gray shirted. And I'm like, oh, you mean red shirted? She's talking about college. No, he gray shirted. I'm like, no, there's no gray shirt. She's like, yes, there is. And she started explaining to me the rules of college basketball. And sure enough, she was right. And I was like,
come on.
She knows so much more about this game of basketball than I'll ever know. And she did live it. And she loves it. And she's got a passion for it. And she's so good at it. And so, I mean, from the very first conversation we had, I was like, wow, she's way out of my league in every possible category.
You just smitten right out the bat?
Yeah. I'll never forget. So I was, random stories that probably are not that interesting to anybody but me. But so it was the lockout. So it was 1998. It was the lockout. And so we missed a couple months of the season. And we were having meetings in New York and Vegas and whatever. And I was a player rep. And so I was flying to New York. And so I had, this is so long ago. This is before I had a cell phone. So I called Leanne's number, left her a message. And then, but I'm on the plane. I don't have a way for her to get a hold of me. We had played phone tag. I was in New York for a day, flew home, never connected with her, and get home. This is the first time I hear her voice. So I get home at like 1 o'clock in the morning, walk into my little studio apartment, and this is when you had an answer machine that you actually push the button to listen to. And so push the answer machine, had a couple messages, and then had 3 messages from her back to back to back, responding to my calls from like a payphone or from my, whatever. And I must have listened to it 5 times because if you've met Leanne, she got so much life in her voice.
No, of course.
And I was just like, I don't know who this person is, but I cannot wait to meet her.
But she's got so much life in everything.
Oh, my gosh.
Like you see her, she's beautiful. She
and
she takes over a room.
But this is so hard to remember. Like I didn't have any idea. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know what she looked like. I couldn't go on Instagram and, and so it's just like, it was just her voice. And I was like, man, I cannot wait to talk to her. And sure enough, a few days later, we finally connected on the phone. And I was like, wow, she just like nobody I've ever met. It was really a blessing.
How special is that? Talk to me a little bit about the courting process. Yeah. I remember her telling this story. Like her dad wasn't like, hey, she talked about like different guys that like wanted to kind of come get to know her. And her dad was a tough cookie.
Her dad was really tough. So it's really interesting. So I knew her dad. Her dad had recruited me to Arizona State when he was at Arizona State. And so I knew him. He had passed away by this time. Okay. And so there's legendary stories of her dad chasing kids out of the house and the whole deal. This happened to me over and over again. So we started talking on the phone, and then Trent Johnson, who was an assistant coach for me when I was at Washington, dear friend of mine, mentor of mine, went on to have a great coaching career all over the country. So he got his first job with Lynn Archibald. So Lynn was coaching at the University of Utah, and he was an assistant for Lynn. In fact, he lived in their basement for a couple months while he was trying to get established. Tough dude, great human being. So Leanne and I have been talking for like 3 weeks, and Trent calls me just to check in, and we're just chatting about how things are going with the Pacers and everything else. And he's like, so I heard you were talking to this Leanne Archibald. And I was like, yes. And he's like, I work for her dad. I was like, I didn't know that, Trent. And immediately I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got the greatest in. Trent loves me. Like he's going to help me. He's
going to help me get this done.
Yeah. And then the next thing out of the words out of his mouth is like, if you mess up with this girl, I will kill you. because she's like my daughter. Like, and
It wasn't like a, hey, we're homies. It was like
nobody was on my side. It was like everybody was. And so,
how great is that?
Yeah, it was really great. And it was fun for us. So, she had a crazy schedule with Dave, but she would get like Friday night, Saturday, Sunday off. And so we had it cooking at some point where it was almost like between playing at Boston and playing the Knicks and playing the Nets and playing Philly.
You've seen each other quite a bit.
Yeah, so every time I go out there, she could swing by and see me.
Because it's so small, it's so tight, it's so close.
And then Dave started a massive philanthropic program in Indianapolis. That's where he's from. His mom lived there.
Yeah.
And so Lee was flying in once a month to do that. And so we saw each other almost every week, and it was magic, man. It was great.
Wow. How cool is that? So fast forward to how'd you get into coaching?
Yeah.
Because you're one, like playing ball at an elite level, but there's a big difference between playing ball and coaching ball.
Yeah.
And very few people like that. There's not too many that can be great players and also great coaches. Even like some of the greatest players aren't very good coaches. Like what was that transition like?
I never wanted to coach. I just felt like I don't want to coach. I'm not going to coach. My whole playing career, I never was coach. And after I finished, I was winding up my NBA career, which I'd gone back and done post-bac classes all over, kind of with every team I was. I ended up doing post-bac classes at Marquette and NYU and Columbia and DU and then I took the MCAT before my last year, before I got fired the last time.
So you're going to go to medical school?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so when I got fired the last time from the Nuggets, I got fired 7 times in the NBA. Super proud of that. And when I got fired last time, we just packed up.
Does that just blow you? Like, that's your life, You're like, literally, you're like, I will get fired in the next, 12 to 24 months, and maybe 6 months.
I wasn't scared of it. I mean, it was just like, I'm going to get fired.
It's
I'm going to
kind
get
of
another job, man. Go get another one. And it sounds easy now. It was really hard then.
Oh,
But, like, when I talk about Coach Pitino changing my life, that's the way he changed my life.
That's how
like,
you got
what?
resilient.
I'm a go, and it's devastating. I mean, I laugh about it now, but every time you get let go, every time you get fired, it is devastating. It is just like you're just on the mat, right? And you wonder if you're ever going to get another job.
But also, like, you're laying it on the line.
Oh,
and
man.
like the org is saying you're not good enough.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Like rejection. I don't know anything that hurts worse than that.
It's rejection. It's public rejection. The whole world knows. Like, and everyone, but that whole process. And by the time we finished, I was really blessed because when George Karl called me in for George had hired me twice and fired me twice. And when George called me the last time and cut me, it was like, we did it. I had this overwhelming feeling like, we did it, man.
Yeah.
Like, we did it.
Yeah.
And so we went straight from there to Columbia Medical School and was at Columbia for almost starting my 4th year. And then we loved every second of it. It's ridiculously challenging and so invigorating and exciting. But probably after my first year at medical school, I was like, I don't know if this is exactly what I want to do. And Mark Fox had been a GA for me at Washington.
I mean, your career's, I'm just like, I didn't know any of this stuff about you. Your career's ridiculous.
So that was a major detour, but it was really meaningful to me. It was kind of like the University of Washington, Kentucky thing. I was there long enough, almost 4 years in medical school, and I was never, I still had 10 years left to go to be a doctor.
Yeah.
But I was there long enough to know that there was something significant that I missed about it.
About sports. Yeah.
And so Coach Fox, after my 3rd year, Coach was like, hey, if you're ever going to make we had talked about it kind of on and off, but I don't know if this is what I want to do. I'm thinking about maybe coaching. He's like, if you're ever going to do it, now's the time. He took the job at University of Georgia. And was like, if you want to come, now's the time.
You take a GA job? You take an assistant
job? I took a worse
job?
than a GA.
Come on.
It was assistant director of ops. So
you're literally
I wasn't allowed to coach.
You're starting at the bottom
I
of the
was
food
doing
chain.
laundry, handing out water and towels. And, I thought when Coach talked to me about coming to work for him, I was like, he'll make me his head assistant coach. I'm an NBA guy, won a national championship. He made me the assistant director of operations. 2 things. One, When I went and told I walked into Dean Melman's office. She's Columbia Medical School, one of the top medical schools in the world now.
She's like, what are you doing?
I'm starting year 4, and I'm like, I'm gonna leave. And she seriously was like,
You're not very smart.
She's been so great to me since, but she was like, dude, you've lost your mind. And so went with Coach Fox and was with him for a year.
That's a big shift.
Yeah. I don't know. What were we thinking?
What were you thinking?
Talk about putting our whole life on the line. There's no more unpredictable career path than coaching. It doesn't make any rhyme or reason.
The bottom.
Yes.
I'm
35 or 36 at the time.
Insane. That's
what
insane.
What were we thinking? And so, and how great is Leanne? That she's like, yep, let's go. I mean, my gosh, what were we thinking? And we shake our heads all the time about that. And then we were super prayerful about it. We felt like we got answers to a really, 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 really difficult decision.
You guys had how many kids at this point?
We had 4 young daughters. In fact, Shay was born while I was in medical school.
You're legit insane.
And so,
the chops that it takes to make that call. Hey, but the other piece that I love about it is you're not doing that unless you think you can be great at it.
Yeah.
So and I think this is going back to Coach Patino, and I think this is going back to getting fired 7 times. And it's kind of this hey, I will die on the treadmill mentality. I will never quit. No one will, you know what I mean? I think those ingredients end up being put you on any track and you'll just work your way to the top. Those are success ingredients.
I believe in 2 things. I believe in 3 things. 1, I believe in God. I believe that he has a plan for us for sure, 100%. 2, I believe in Leanne. I believe that Leanne and I can just get off the mat 1,000 times. I'm not scared of failing. We've done it so many times. I'm not scared of it because we know we'll get up and we know we'll go back to it. And 3 is I got a ton of faith in work. Work doesn't let you down.
Yeah.
Work doesn't guarantee you the ultimate success, but if you work, you can survive.
Wow.
You can go do it, right? And so anyway, so we walk out of there. I'm with Coach for a year, and he was very purposeful. He was like, hey, I think you're going to be super successful in this business, but if you want to be great at it, then you're going to be better at every single person's job in your organization than they are. And so he's like, you're starting here with the towels and the laundry and the water.
I had him, Todd Peterson, he's a friend of ours, but that was my start.
Yep.
And I remember going to work at Apex. I was 24 years old. And it's funny because I'd started out at this little company and had a lot of success early.
Yep.
And then that company went bankrupt. And I went over and I felt entitled. I felt
you'd already done it.
I felt that I'd checked this box. And I remember I was coming to work for Todd, and I felt that there was a title. I felt that there was pay that, I'd earned, and I didn't want to go backwards. And I still remember one of the greatest things that he ever did, that guy's a gift, a gift in my life. He changed my life. But he told the truth, and he just said, if you want to be great in this organization, the people will never respect you unless you've started at the bottom. Yep. And it was this humble pie because I actually had other people tell me the opposite. I had other voices that were saying, you're better than this. You can have this office, you can have this title, you can have this pay. But it resonated with me that he was telling the truth. Yep. And I look back at those 2 roads and I just would never have had the success of my career if I wouldn't have had, a leader that was deliberate and was intentional and told the truth, And so I hear that and I kind of connect with parallels in my life and how impactful it was to start at the bottom and to do those jobs.
Don't you feel that with every person that is kind of found some trajectory in their life, don't you find that to be a universal thing? That it's this gift to kind of...
it's so hard.
Yes.
It's so hard. And even in me, I remember it's me and my wife.
Yep. Yeah.
Me and my wife, we're meeting with Alex Dunn and Todd.
Yeah.
And my hard-hearted, brain, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go make less money to do a more menial job. And it was ultimately, it was my wife that just said, this is the right thing. And I knew in my heart, but my brain was not there.
Yep.
And again, like it is what it, like the people that chose the easier route, it was easy first, hard later.
Yes.
And mine was hard first, easier later. And that's just, but it's so hard to teach, and it's like equally as hard.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where like when you tell this story, like I admire, I have admiration for you guys for making that, to trusting the process.
Yep.
And you must have trusted your friend.
Yep. Totally.
That
A lot of
he
faith in
knew.
him. Yeah, and it's interesting, and there's so many stories. First, my first kind of takeaway is, like, I'm a big believer in trajectory, and so a lot of times, if you're willing to start at the very bottom, it actually increases the curve, the degree of your trajectory.
So expand on that a little bit.
So I think people are attracted to movers, right? I think in the game of basketball, the ball finds energy. It just finds energy. So, it's an age-old adage that if you play hard, the ball finds you. And if you don't, the ball doesn't find you. There's only one ball, 5 players, 10 players on a court. Everybody wants the ball, and the ball finds energy.
Wow.
And I feel the same way in like life path, in growth path. That is that the people with the steepest trajectory, okay, that's who, to confuse these two analogies, the ball finds the people with the steepest trajectory.
No, I mean,
and
you
actually,
see it. You can physically see it everywhere,
And so the miss that I think a lot of us make is we want to start at a mid-level position where our trajectory by definition is going to be more flat.
Yeah.
But if we go to the bottom, then if we really have talent, if we really work like crazy, then we have a chance for our trajectory to be super steep, even though we're starting at a lower point.
Who taught you this, or is this like a personal philosophy?
Well, I don't know. I think it's just from I think it's just paying attention.
I've never heard it articulated, and it makes so much sense
Doesn't
to me.
it?
Like for me, you see these rising stars.
Yes.
And it's like they do this, then they do this, then they do this. Like I remember listening to Jim Harbaugh's story.
Yep. Yeah.
He came out and he starts at San Diego. Mm-hmm. They didn't even have a program. Yep. And then he does the right thing there, and then he goes to Stanford, and they were terrible.
Yep.
And then he wins there, then he goes to the 49ers, and then you end up with Michigan. And same thing with Urban Meyer. We had Urban Meyer come, and like he's getting this, he's at Notre Dame, and he gets an offer at Bowling Green.
Yeah.
And he goes back to Lou Holtz, and he says, hey, like, this isn't a very good job.
Right.
And Lou Holtz is like, well, you're not a very good coach.
Yeah, it's
like,
so good.
Why do you think they're going to offer that to you?
That's exactly right.
But you like take care of this, and it opens the door to this. And what you're describing is that, but I've just never heard that language around it.
But I think it's got to be the definition of your entrepreneurship life, right? I mean, that's how it works, isn't it?
I've experienced it, but I've never heard it like framed like that, and I love it.
But I do, like, if I was going to choose level or trajectory. So if you think about it that way, I would always counsel people to do this. If you're going to choose level, meaning the highest level, or if you're going to choose the highest trajectory, always choose the highest trajectory, because momentum is real.
I'm telling you, I study this stuff like my whole life. I've never heard it explained like that.
Yeah. And I say the same thing for athletes, right? Like, in guys' athletic progress, right now it's kind of this deal like, I got to get on the floor right now. I got to, I hear this all the time. It's so crazy. I hear guys say, I want to be, it's the same thing as a mid-level. As a freshman, I need to play 20 minutes a game. I need to play 20 minutes a game. And so, you can force feed a guy 20 minutes a game as a freshman.
And you've got to experience this all the time, because you also have competing voices.
Totally.
They're saying, I will give you 22 minutes. We'll give you 25 minutes. Totally. It's like the option exists somewhere.
But
you know what I
that's
mean?
the same equivalent to taking the mid-level job, right? You might not be ready for it. It's gonna really slow down your growth curve, right? Or if it's saying, you know what, I'm gonna take the 2 minutes that I can get, I'm going to go crush those 2 minutes. They're going to be exciting 2 minutes.
And I'm going to build on it.
When I strike my curve, all of a sudden I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready to step into my opportunity when it comes.
Yeah.
And my trajectory is going to be really special. And I don't know. I just think there's some realness to that. I think we see it over and over.
But you did it. So you start like at the bottom. Where did it go from there? Because your
It was fast.
trajectory
Yeah,
went like that, didn't it?
So I was an assistant operations guy for a year. And then Jeff Bizdelik, who I had played for with the Denver Nuggets, took the Wake Forest job, and he brought me on as an assistant coach in the ACC. And then I was there for 1 year, and then Dave Rose, coach, was killing it here at BYU, and I was excited to come out west and learn from him. And so he let
3
me come.
years.
Yeah, so third year I was here as an assistant.
Come
And then
on.
I was with coach for 4 years, and then took my first head job at UVU.
At UVU.
Yeah.
And that
so-
UVU job was crazy.
Oh, my
because,
gosh.
Because like
it was awesome.
yeah,
it was every
you
bit
guys,
startup.
but you lit that thing on fire.
It was, we didn't have a gym. So our first day of training camp, you're trying to set it. You're going to relate to this so much. So it's our first day of training camp. You're trying to set a tone. It's my first day of official practice as a head coach, and we're going to change this joint. So we didn't have a gym to practice, so we had to practice at Orem High School. It's a 6 a.m. practice. All the guys there are 5:45. Like, we got
Ready.
the tone
Everybody's
set.
ready.
We're on fire. We're going hard for 15 minutes. All of a sudden, the gym doors burst open, and all of the Orem High School cheerleaders rush onto the floor because there's a conflict. So we had to leave.
Come on.
We had to leave for the Orem freshman cheerleaders so they could practice. And that was like the beginning of our epic saga at UVU. I mean, it was just every bit of startup.
Have you ever read Wooden Stuff?
Yeah,
I'm thinking about like these stories of like these guys you're trying to build like, and they ended up building this like perennial power. Yeah. But it started off like you're like in like the side little like gym. They don't even have a basketball arena, and you're trying to like have these standards and
so. And then it was four of the most fun years of my life because, it was everything was shoestring, everything we were bootstrapping everything, right? So, I had my daughter, so we're trying to like, when we first got to UVU, they only had general admission tickets. Like, you would go buy a ticket for $5 and come and sit wherever you want. You come sit courtside if there was a courtside ticket left. Like, it was insanity, right? And so we started the Green Club, right? And it was courtside tickets, and I think we sold them for like $200, right? And I was calling every human being on the planet trying to sell these. And so we tried to like make it really nice. Like we were hand delivering the season tickets in these boxes. You open up, there's a video that would play. Like Alexander's helped us with all this stuff, and then we had a little courtside food section off the corner of the arena where literally my daughters are cooking pretzels and hot dogs and giving them to the courtside club.
Gosh.
Like, it was so great. And then, I was really blessed to be working for Matt Holland, who's one of my heroes.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about Matt, because Matt was so transformational in that whole process. I mean, like, he kind of, and to Astrid, and she's done such a good job, but I mean, he changed that school.
Yeah, his vision, man. He's just his vision. He was the one who hired me. Like, he personally hired me, and he was generous to give me access to him. And he was such an unbelievable mentor. Like, he just helped me reroute all the wrong thinking that I had. And one of the bold things that he did was, I went to him like, we have to have a practice facility. If we're going to be serious, we have to build a practice facility. And he was kind of like, good, go raise the money. And so we're in the process of raising the money, and we're trying to find a space. And there was all this stuff, and he ended up putting it right by, the UCCU Center. And I'll never forget, we were 6 months into raising, raising the money. And we had some plans that we picked out the spot. And I walked into his office, and I was just like, you could feel my frustration, like this wasn't finished yet. Like, we hadn't finished the building, right? And he was just like, just calm down, like, we're going. But he gave us free reign to go talk to every, like, it was unbelievable, the access he gave us.
He just opened the door.
Yeah, and building that, and Dick Hunsaker had been the coach there and had great success there before we got there. He's a great coach. But, like, we were trying to go to a next level program.
Which it is. I mean, when I went to Utah Valley.
Yeah.
And when I was there, it was UVSC.
Yeah.
And then UVU. And so like it's transforming from like this like junior college to state school to university.
Yeah. I'll never.
And those aren't like easy transitions. You know what I mean?
And it's just like, it's just, you know, it's a dear friend of mine who's been a great mentor to me talks about how you are in a plane, you know, your own plane racing down the runway, still trying to put together the wings before you reach maximum speed so you can actually take off. And that's how it felt every day.
Yeah.
I'll never forget talking to an administrator at UVU and saying like, I got to get a game with BYU. I got to get a bye game. Like we have to get a game. We have to get a game. And him being like, no, you know, we don't want to do that. That's just going to make us look bad. It's going to make us look awful. And so just even the scheduling aspect. And then I think we the first time we played BYU, we were down 24-2 in the first 6 minutes of the game. And then the next year we came and beat them at their place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a.
Yeah. And it was just one step in this progress. And then I got the bad back end of that too, because I got beat by UVU a couple times in the last 2 years. But that's I'm actually so proud of that.
How that program's turned into.
Yeah, because like we grew it, and I'll always love my experience there. It was really special.
I mean, that story is crazy though. Like it's so, your life is improbable. Like every step of the way, like
it sounds that way now, but like. But that's because we're not talking about all the fails. Like,
but I mean, I'm just like
the best blessing we've had is we've failed so much, but we've been able to do it really fast.
I think God has like a plan for all of us, but for you specifically to make an impact in people's lives. Because there's no other. As I like look at the path, there's nothing else that explains it. Like. These steps and like the role that you're in now with these young people, and building a program. Like you experience right now is a high, but you've experienced the lows. Like you've experienced the whole thing. It's special. Life is beautiful. It really is so fun to watch.
Man. And the you know, some of my, you know, I told the story a lot, but one of my most choice experiences ever was when Larry Bird called me into his office and fired me. And so this is Larry Bird. Just think about this, man. Like this is my hero of heroes. And he's actually been super generous with me for 2 years. And we've had great teams, and he's actually played me some. And so it's training camp year 3, and he brings me to his office right before the end of training camp. And I've just got married. And he brings me in, and we've just moved into a new arena, new practice facility. And so he, you know, I don't know how to say it other than it's like my hero of heroes. And he was like, I'm going to let you go. And it was super brief because I was about to break into tears and I had to get out of there. So he said, Mark, you know, this is the best thing for your career. And when he said it, I was like, that's bullcrap, man. What are you talking about? This is the best thing for my career. And I just had that, and tears coming or whatever. So I run out of his office, and I turn right in the locker room, and there's Reggie and Jack and all the guys just changing. And I got tears coming out of my face, and I've been battling with these guys for 2 years, and it just is humiliation and everything. It was just awful, right? And so
you're just naked at that point, like emotionally naked. Like there's no place to hide.
Can't hide. And I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to respond. And it's just the moments are terrible. And then, you know, those guys were so great to me always, kind of big hugs and like, you know, whatever. And then halfway through the next season, the Pacers came to Milwaukee where I was playing and I was starting, and we blasted them. And coach was right. Like that, you
couldn't have had that. You couldn't have had that.
You like the best redirect in my life, and it gave me a chance to go actually do some things in the NBA that I had never done before on another great team.
Wow.
In a role that I'd never had before,
and it was the right role for you.
It was the right role.
Yeah.
And coach could have nursed me along, and I could have kept playing 2 minutes a game and been the 14th guy on the bench, but he needed to like cut me, like, and I say cut me like in the sense of cutting me from the roster, but he cut me to my core. And it changed my life. It gave me an opportunity to like talk about humiliating. Like, my wife thought she married an NBA player. She really married 2 months later an unemployed guy,
For sure.
right?
No,
And the
for sure.
humbling nature of that, and then having to pick ourselves back up and go back to work and like fight it and fight it and fight it. And then it gave us a chance to get to a new higher level.
No,
And
I think
that's
what
life.
you're describing is like what all of us in our journey experience at different times. I remember, and this is, so different but so personal and so real to me. I remember I played junior college baseball, and then I went on a mission, and I went to UVU to play baseball, and I just played terrible. And I'm on the fall team, and they post the roster, and I don't make the team.
Yeah.
And I'd never been cut in anything in my life. And I was so broken. Like, so much of my identity is that I'm an athlete and I'm a baseball player. And I still remember just driving up the canyon, just crying and just like broken, just like, I'm so down right now. Like, I'm just kind of soaking in it. And I think back, and I'm like, that was like such a, like, life is so beautiful.
Yes.
Like, even the downs
Yes.
that can you imagine if it was all in here, like the peaks and the valleys are like what makes it, so special. Like, you appreciate the highs, but you can't truly appreciate them without those lows that are so bitter.
And isn't there something about you driving up the canyon crying, like totally despairing, that now you just love that
Like,
moment
it's so special.
much.
It's
so special.
It's a gift from God. It's one of those, like, that I look back and I just say, like, that's one of those beautiful moments where you really are like emotionally naked. I'm like, everything that my identity, this is who I am.
Yep.
And I just am not good enough.
Yep.
And it's like, and then you pick yourself up from your bootstraps and you go back to work. And like, once you like have your little cry, then it's like, hey, no more crying. Now it's time to go.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about your faith. We talk about career and it's so, I have like this weird admiration for coaching. The coaches in my life, I remember being in high school and being like, I'm going to go make a lot of money. Because I had Gary Stevenson that was the business guy. And I'm like, I want to live like they live.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a coach. And I, like, in a 15-year-old brain or I didn't know how those reconciled. But I just knew my coach believes in me more than I believe in myself. And I want to do that for people. And second, like, I want to go live a life that has more opportunity, that I can do more things. And so I have kind of this, I've studied, all these coaches, and it's actually this profound impact on my business career, because coaching is life. Coaching is how to move people and how to lead people, and specifically college coaching. You know what I mean? In college, you're in that like transition from colleges kind of becoming professional at your professional coaching in a way. But talk to me about faith and how that's affected your personal decisions, your career track, and how does it kind of bring it all together?
Yeah, so my faith is really important to me. Like, it's kind of the bedrock of everything that I am and aspire to be, and it's the foundation of how I see the world. Like, I see the world through faithful eyes. I do feel like we all have a purpose here. Like, we all have a purpose for our life.
Yeah.
I feel like God has plans for us. I really do feel like that. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of the things that's been emphasized in our ward, our church congregation the last few days is these patriarchal blessings, and even is something as practical as that is an idea that God has a plan for your life, and a plan for you to be able to grow, and a plan for you to be able to serve, and a plan for you to be able to have an impact on the people around you. My faith is very much about that we're a community that has to look out for each other and help each other and serve each other, so that we can become all the things that God intends us to become, and that we can do it together. And so that brings a lot of peace. It hasn't always. Like, Listen, I worry and have more anxiety and frustration than could probably be quantifiable in a person's life.
Probably
Like,
addicted to it.
yeah, I have
There's
all of that.
pieces that, you become addicted to some of those emotions.
But all that's not built on an empty foundation or a sandy foundation. All that's built on a really solid foundation. I mean, it kind of rests and it floats around on a
Yeah.
very solid foundation of this idea that God has plans for us. And then it's also built on this this faith that in the end, everything's going to actually be okay.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, this is not sports, but I'll never forget, like, for us in my generation, 9/11 was such a terrifying moment in time. And I'll never forget, that week coming into church and sitting in a elders quorum class lesson, and just kind of everybody couldn't talk or think about anything else, and guys just talking about how everything's changed. Everything has changed forever. The world has changed forever now that this happened.
Yeah.
And as that conversation was going on, I just had this thought in my mind about, like, I get it. I understand everything you're saying, but actually nothing has changed.
Interesting.
Jesus Christ is still the Savior. And the gospel plan is still the gospel plan. And our Heavenly Father is still our Heavenly Father. And actually, like, all this terrible stuff on this planet that we're doing to each other has maybe changed. But actually, the real things, the main things, are still the main things, and nothing's ever changed. And I think the peace that we gather from that, the confidence that we gather from that, like, listen, the beautiful things about, we started this podcast talking about the unpredictability of sports, right?
For sure.
And nobody knows that better than me. Like, the number of times I've been fired and hired, and the highs and lows.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing guaranteed. But at the end, when you get to approach this job with all its dynamic uncertainty and know that in the end, everything is going to be okay because, like, Jesus Christ is my Savior, how powerful is that?
That's so profound.
And how much does that allow you to operate your life with some confidence and self-assurance?
And to navigate
ease?
uncertainty, actually to
Yes.
seek it out. If
Yes.
you don't have that, you play things so much more safe.
Yes.
Because you can take risks knowing
Yes.
that, like, it's all going to be okay. But that core belief needs to be there.
Yep.
It's all going to be okay.
Yep.
Like, it's not going to work out.
Yep.
Like, it is going to go bad, but it's all going to be okay. Allows you to, like, navigate and go forward, to take the leap.
I think sometimes we miss the gospel. I think sometimes we miss the atonement a little bit. When Jesus tells us take his yoke upon us so he can make our yoke light and easy, I actually think that's really literal. And I think it's in the sense of, like, of taking some of the burden of worry and anxiety off of our shoulders.
I mean, I think we talk about it more in 2023 than ever before.
Yes.
I think our parents and even we experienced, these fear and anxiety and even depression.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of socialized and talked about more. But I feel those burdens like lifted when I'm in tune with God.
Yep.
Where those same things, they're still there. They're still floating. The risks are still there, the uncertainty, the challenges, but I don't feel them the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can actually, like, be pretty happy and navigate, where there's other times where it's paralyzing, where I'm not at my emotional best and it weighs me down,
One of my lifetime favorite quotes is Jack London said, "I'd rather be ashes than dust. I'd rather be ashes than dust." And I think the gospel allows us to really embrace that.
Just to go for it.
Yeah, our purpose is to be here and not, like, we're not supposed to be here and be dust.
Yeah.
We're not. We're supposed to come here and, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And you know what? The great thing about the atonement in a literal sense is we can burn to ashes and we get another chance.
Yep.
And we can burn to ashes, we get another chance. And that's the power of the gospel, man. And so my faith has had every bit of impact on every facet of my life. And it does, I'm trying to incorporate it more into how I coach and how I teach. And I do think the answers are there, and I think it's an incredible gift.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Like this is, when you asked me to participate in an NIL, I didn't do it for BYU. I did it because you asked me to, and it's because I get to watch you as a man and as a leader in the community, and I just think BYU is lucky. I think they're really lucky to have you, and I think those players are really lucky to have you as a mentor. And I think this life experience and these battle scars that you've experienced, that you get to bring that to your players. And, I'm pulling for you, I'm pulling for the team, but I kind of don't care what happens because it is going to work out the way it's going to work out. And so I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for telling your story, and look forward to cheering for you in the wins to come.
Thanks, Casey. Super grateful.